Hello everyone, Happy New Year, and today I am going to be doing 3 consecutive videos because I'm going to be gone from Thursday to Saturday evening. So I will be making today's video for Wednesday, tomorrow's video for Thursday, and then Friday's video all in one day. So without further ado, let me get started with Anna Karenina. And I'll pull the book up actually right here. This book is written by Leo Tolstoy. I don't know if any of you are familiar with this author, but he also wrote another famous work that's called War and Peace, which is more well recognized compared to this one, because usually when people think of this author, I think they automatically think War and Peace and then maybe Anna Karenina second, but I just got done finishing it, and as you can tell, it is a Bible. It is literally 754 pages, I believe, at least my version is, and yeah, it really drags on. But what does Anna Karenina have to offer? Well, it is a very character-based story. It's a lot about characters, a lot about character interactions, character relationships, and all that jazz. It's really focused on trying to bring out all of these characters. Not just Anna Karenina, because we actually don't even see Anna till a little bit later on in the book. I won't say she's not completely put on the backdrop for a while, but we don't even hear from her or actually get to interact with her as a character until a little bit within the, I would say, sort of beginning, but not completely at the start. Because at the start we're introduced to her brother, who's named Stefan Arkadjevich Obolonsky, or as short, Steva, that's what he's called. And basically he's sort of a civil servant, and not only is he the brother to Anna, but he is also married to this woman named Dolly, and I'm going to use her short name because the other name just goes on forever, and I'm really horrible with names, as you all know. So, for short, he's married to Dolly. You'll kind of see how they have their own issues, and that's sort of presented in the way beginning. But what is really the story about, ultimately? Well, I can kind of sum it up in this way. It is trying to be a love story, but the funny thing is a lot of it I feel is more tragic than really a love story. This book I feel is more of a tragedy and not really a love story. I mean, you could make the argument it might be similar to kind of like Romeo and Juliet, with the fact that there's a lot of similar struggles like guilt, sadness, loss, all that stuff is pretty much in this book. So I would say it's kind of like a soap opera, but I think it's executed fairly well. I mean, Leo knows how to write characters and such, but I think what makes this book, stand out to a lot of people is the fact that it is trying to touch in onto these concepts of guilt and of divorce, which at the time wasn't really talked about. But in order to really give you a sense of the plot, and again, since it's very character driven, I don't want to give a whole lot away of how the characters interact, how relationships form, how relationships fall apart. I don't really want to do that because I think that's really the crux of the book, and I don't want to give that away for anybody. So I'll basically sum it up to you this way. Anna, our main character, and the title of the book, ends up falling for this man named Alexei Krivolich Vronsky, and usually he's called Vronsky for short. And the problem is though that she's married to this other guy named Alexei Alexandrovich Karenin, and I think they call him Alexei for short sometimes. But basically, it really, for the most part, that's like the major plot line dealing with her, is sort of like this relationship that she ends up forming with Vronsky, and how that ultimately sort of makes everything in her life sort of fall apart. And also what you have to understand is a lot of these characters are of a good standing within the class system that's within Russia. So it's not like these people are peasants or living on the farm, although there's one character that I'll discuss later who's kind of more from that perspective, but they seem to be okay and well off. They don't seem like money is really a huge issue for them, but these kinds of social circumstances are, and you'll kind of see how they play into Anna's life and how ultimately she's kind of torn between these forces that are sort of occupying her mind, and how she kind of just deteriorates over time because of those circumstances. And it really makes you think a lot about these kinds of issues, like again of guilt and the idea of divorce, and the sort of the self-centeredness of each of the characters, and how that really impacts the story. So it's really character driven and character based, but all you have to know is if you like characters, if you like these really traditional style books, and if you don't mind reading a Bible, then this book is probably for you. If you don't want to read a Bible and you would rather have things sort of explained to you in fairly simple terms, then this is probably not the book for you. This book goes way in depth. I think almost too in depth at points, where I feel like it's straying away from the plot at times, and then you have all these little subplots going on, and I feel like this book could have been a little bit more concise. But again, I think it just depends, because again, this writing is so completely different from today's writing, because Leo was, I think, around in like the 1800s or so, and I think that's really when this book takes place, around that time. So I think later 1800s. So it's really not a book that's something to, I guess, be something for you to just read within a weekend or within a month. This is going to take you a while, and it's really going to take some effort to read it through it. But again, I don't really want to give anything too much away about it, so it's kind of hard for me to discuss this book. But what I can say also is, despite this kind of problem that Anna's dealing with, and with the fact that she doesn't really love her husband, that she wants to be with this other guy, there's also a sort of other story dealing, which is probably, I would say he's probably the next main character throughout the story, because we really get a sense of his perspective. And this man is named Levin, and he's an old friend of Anna's brother, Steva. And he's a landowner, so he's more, again, involved with the countryside, and understands that aspect. He ends up marrying someone that's sort of within Anna and all the other characters' circle, named Kitty. She's always called Kitty usually. She has a longer name, but I'm not going to go say that because it's just too long and I can't pronounce it all properly. But you'll kind of see how he sort of has a difficulty of approaching her at first, and then how ultimately their relationship forms. And it's also about him personally and his inner turmoil and struggles, sort of dealing with spirituality and philosophy. So there's kind of these kinds of things within this book. So if you like those things, it's definitely worth reading because it takes up a good chunk of the story. And the funny thing is it really doesn't end with Anna. It really ends with Levin and his perspective. So I find that to be really interesting. And I heard, at least from what the back of what this version of the book says, is that Levin was sort of based on Leo himself. So I guess that's probably why he decided to use that as a second main use him as a second main character. But basically, that's really all I can say without giving anything away. But again, by what I mean is what I mean by saying that Anna Karenina is a tragedy is because it focuses sort of on the difficulties of love and how ultimately certain factors lead to people sort of falling apart and not being able to take the emotions and not being able to cope with the reality that's in front of them, or or go into sort of another world that's really not there. And you'll kind of see how Anna sort of goes there, where she starts being really paranoid and she sort of is trying to, again, she is kind of at that state of what she wants, but she, for some reason, she feels like that what she has is still not enough somehow. And you really do see these things really tear her apart. And it really starts from the fact, from this love that she has for Vronsky. So you really will see that downfall, and you really will see her spiral. But I don't want to give away exactly as to what happens because that will be spoiling the story. I'm not going to say as to whether or not this ends in a tragedy, but what I mean by a tragedy is that it encompasses a lot of the story. It's not really all happy-go-lucky. Really, none of it is. It's really drenched with, like, everybody, kind of being happy at points. I mean, you do see Levin and Kitty kind of being the happy couple, but it seems like that everything that happens within Anna's relationships are just kind of just, they don't feel settled, or they don't feel like normal, especially when she starts to get into this paranoia, and she just kind of falls apart. And really it's about sort of her downfall and how she copes with it, because falling in love with someone and being married was seen as something really bad back in that day. So not only is she dealing with the fact that she's hurting her current husband, and at the same time she's hurting her son too, who she has with the man that she's currently married. You'll see how that ultimately tears everything apart. So even further. So it's really about this kind of struggle within these relationships that she ultimately develops, and that she ultimately sort of lets go in exchange for something else. So it's really a depressing story. It's not really all that uplifting. It's not like, I just don't get why this person, this man named Vladimir Nabokov, called this story one of the greatest love stories in world literature. And I really don't see a love story here. I see more of a tragedy, of somebody who sacrificed a lot to have something that she ultimately wanted and cared for, and then sort of seeing how there are consequences for wanting something like this. So it's really it's not designed to be this kind of happy story. I think Anna can be a divisive character. Again, she is kind of, I wouldn't say she has similar characteristics to somebody like somebody like Scarlett O'Hara and like Gone with the Wind, but she does have this kind of stubborn attitude, and she does kind of have this paranoia within her, and I think that's what ultimately leads her to her going down under from what she already had to start out with. And you will, and what I do like is that even with her character having so much dimension, there's also all the other characters that have dimension. Vronsky is I think fairly likable, even though he has a hard time sort of dealing with Anna because of these kinds of conflicting issues that she's having. Also, Alexei, her actual husband, he seems to be fairly sympathetic and likable, and even though he feels like within his heart he can't really give her what she wants, which is a divorce. So you will see him struggling with this issue and how it really hurts his character too. So again, that's why I feel like it's more of a tragedy, because it's not only affecting Anna personally, it's affecting all of these people that surround her life. So to say that it's a love story, I think is looking at it in a fairly simplistic way. This to me is a very complex kind of tragedy story. And if you like tragedies, if you like these kinds of stories that focus in on characters and their inner turmoils, then this is definitely a novel for you. However, if you are not into that sort of thing, I probably would suggest not reading the story. I'm glad that I read it though, and that I took the time to absorb everything. I just feel like it could have been shortened a lot to make it maybe more engaging for me and interesting, but I think it is recommendable as a classic book. But would I read it again? No, too long. But I think it's worth reading through once if you are sort of into this kind of a tragic story. And I found myself to be fairly invested at points, and other points I just felt like the book kind of diddle-doddles and doesn't really focus on like the main issue at times. So, or a variety of issues that are going on within the book that are kind of important. It kind of just strays away and then just kind of focuses in on some character, but it doesn't. Yeah, I guess that the way I can describe it is that this book doesn't really have a whole lot of focus, but it does have that main point of Anna falls in love with another man, and that man isn't her husband. So that's really the basic gist. But I would just let everybody know going into this is not a love story. This is a tragedy. At least to me, it's more of a tragedy rather than a love story. But I think that's really ultimately all I can say. Any questions, comments, concerns? More than happy to answer them. But until the next video, which I'll be posting again today, bye-bye.